The moment Linda Mercer pointed her finger at me and said, "I was the real threat to this family," something shifted. You hear someone twist the truth like that, and you realize you're standing on a fault line you didn't know existed. If you've ever seen a family fracture from the inside, tell me your story. I walked into Harbor Roast and stopped when Linda's voice cut across the room. She stood near the hallway, arms crossed, while Emily knelt on the tile with a scrub brush in her hand. My daughter kept her head low, shoulders pulled tight, trying to disappear. Linda didn't even glance at me when she spoke. "Your girl made a mess back here. She cleans it. That's how I raised my son, and that's how she'll learn." Emily's hand trembled. That small movement said more than any excuse she could have forced out. She didn't speak, didn't even lift her face. A young barista reached toward her with a roll of paper towels, but Linda snapped at the kid before the hand got halfway. "Don't interfere. She needs discipline." The room stiffened. My voice stayed level. "Emily, stand up." Emily froze. Linda stepped between us. "She's not done. Our family has rules, Ray. If she marries my son, she follows them." Another breath, steady and measured, kept me from answering the way I wanted. The girl on the floor pushed herself halfway upright, caught between two worlds she didn't seem able to leave. "I need to see the office," I said. Linda let out a sharp, irritated exhale, but turned toward the back. Emily followed at a distance, arms wrapped around herself. The hallway felt narrow as we moved past storage racks toward the small office Emily once used proudly when the place first opened. A stack of folders lay scattered on the desk. Linda reached for them, but a corner of a document poking from under a binder caught my eye. The bold print "Temporary Transfer of Operational Control" pulled me in fast. Emily lingered by the doorway like someone afraid to cross an invisible line. The top sheet showed a signature that matched hers, though the angle and pressure told a different story. Dates didn't match the timeline she had given me when the cafe launched. A line buried in the middle locked the whole thing in place, Linda. 51% controlling interest. Emily's breath hitched. That was the only sound she made. Linda moved closer, pretending to straighten the papers. "Emily came to me for guidance. She was overwhelmed. I had to step in. It's better this way." My thumb slid under the corner of the page while the other hand lifted my phone. A quick photo captured the document before Linda understood what I was doing. "Ray, go home," she snapped. "Let me teach my daughter-in-law how to run a business with standards." No answer left my mouth. The contract said everything I needed to know. Emily's fingers gripped the doorframe, knuckles pale. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. Linda realized too late that the pages weren't in her hand yet. She lunged forward, reaching for the stack. My grip held. For a second, we stood close enough to hear each other's breath. "Give me that," she hissed. Her nails brushed the edge of the folder as she tried to pull it free. My hand stayed firm, not yanking, not bracing, just refusing to release it while her stare burned straight into mine. Rosa looked up from the folding counter the moment I stepped into her shop. One eyebrow rose before she even spoke. "Ray, you look like you walked through something you shouldn't have." "Something like that?" I answered, easing myself onto a plastic chair by the wall. She wiped her hands on her apron and leaned closer. "What happened?" A short version came out the toilet, the contract, the stare Linda held long enough to make the room tilt. Rosa didn't blink through any of it. When I finished, she shook her head slowly. "If that woman holds 51%, you and Emily are about to lose everything," she said. "People like her never stop where they start." A phone buzzed in my pocket before I could reply. Connor's name filled the screen. I answered. "What were you thinking, Ray?" He shot out no greeting. "You can't show up and bark orders in front of everyone. Mom's trying to get the cafe running right. Emily needs structure." "Connor," I said, "Your mother crossed the line." He scoffed loud enough to echo over the line. "No, you crossed it. If you keep stirring things up, don't expect me to let you keep dragging Emily into your drama." The call ended without a goodbye. Rosa watched my expression shift. "Let me guess," she said. "He defended Mama Bear." "Something like that." Rosa blew out a breath, grabbed a detergent box, and slid it onto a shelf. "Emily's trapped under that woman's thumb. Connor, too. You better figure out what that contract really means." The reminder pushed me back out the door. A drive later, I sat at my kitchen table, the photo of the contract enlarged on my laptop. Terms stacked across the screen, some written cleanly, some oddly phrased. One line near the bottom demanded a second look. Authority to manage all community funds tied to past medical support. Emily had once battled a medical scare right before her wedding. The neighborhood raised money to help with her bills. I remembered the gratitude in her voice when she told me about it. I also remembered her saying Linda offered to handle the paperwork because things were hectic. Pulling up my old email archive, I dug out the original statements Emily forwarded years ago. I compared them to a set of records from the cafe's financial portal that Emily had shared last winter. The numbers didn't match. Several withdrawals happened during the same period the temporary transfer contract was drafted. Another message appeared on my phone. "Sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to sign anything risky. I just wanted Connor to stay calm. I didn't want more fighting." My reply was short. "Do you have the physical contract?" No message came after that. The silence stretched while I traced more figures, flagged transactions, and noted patterns. A knot formed low in my chest. Emily wasn't only overwhelmed, she had been conditioned to keep trouble from reaching her husband, even when the trouble came from people under her own roof. A second call came, this time from Connor's older brother, Mark. I answered reluctantly. "Ray," he began, strained already. "We heard you stirred up tension at the cafe. Let us take care of things. Our family handles our issues without involving outsiders." "I'm not an outsider," I answered. "To our family dynamic you are. Step back. Emily's adjusting. She'll be fine." He didn't wait for a response. The click after his last word carried more weight than anything he said. Rosa texted shortly after. "That woman's been weaving threads for years. Don't let her tie you up in them." The message stayed on the screen while I stood in the garage doorway later that evening. Sawdust and old oil stains lined the floor, remnants from the projects I buried myself in after retiring. A file cabinet rested near the back. The metal was cold when I laid my hand against it, the same way it always felt during long nights reviewing cases in my old job. Each drawer carried pieces of a former life training records case, summaries, audit templates, fraud analysis sheets. None of them had been touched in years. Retirement convinced me I'd never need any of it again. A breath left slowly as a drawer slid open. The folders hadn't moved since the day I shut the cabinet. I sifted through the papers, the old instincts waking one by one. Patterns, signatures, inconsistencies, habits I thought I had left behind in the office corridors in Olympia. Rosa's warning. Connor's defensive tone, Emily's apology, the financial discrepancies they pressed together in a single line of pressure. My fingertips paused on a binder labeled Community Finance Compliance. Pages curled at the edges, but the structure was intact. It held everything I would need to evaluate the contract, the withdrawals, and whatever Linda built beneath the surface. A soft hum from the refrigerator in the kitchen filtered into the garage while I set the binder on the workbench. The desk lamp cast a small patch of clarity across the first page. I stopped outside the old building for a moment, trying to steady myself. The past few days had stacked up on my chest, each one heavier than the last. Sleep hadn't done much. Thoughts kept circling the same point that contract wasn't just sloppy paperwork. Someone had shaped it to trap Emily, and every detail pushed me deeper into that conclusion. Walking into Greg's small office felt like stepping back into the life I'd tried to leave. Greg squinted at the photo on my phone, his jaw tightening as the pieces sank in for him too. "Yeah, Ray, this." He ran a hand across his chin. "This doesn't add up. The date's wrong. Signature pressure's off. Someone doctored this." A small knot formed in my gut. Greg reached into a drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. "This came in anonymously a few months back," he said, as he handed over a printed email. The message was short, direct, and ugly. It accused Linda of siphoning community funds. The sender had no evidence, so the department shelved it, but it was enough to make the picture sharper. I folded the page slowly. Doubt crept in. Was I helping Emily or tearing open her life in a way she wouldn't forgive? Her face flashed in my mind the way she looked caught between fear and loyalty. The thought sat heavy as I walked back out to the parking lot. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. "Sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to sign it. I just wanted Connor calm. He's been so stressed." Emily's message felt like someone tightened a strap around my ribs. I typed a short reply. "Do you have the original contract?" No answer came. Another buzz. "Connor this time. Ray, what the hell?" "Linda's managing things. Stop making it worse." His defensiveness didn't surprise me, but it still hit a raw spot. Linda had him wrapped so tightly he couldn't see daylight. It had been that way since their engagement. He mistook control for structure, mistook obedience for love. The whole family felt like it was sliding into Linda's orbit, one person at a time. A firm knock pulled me out of the spiral. Rosa walked in like she already knew what she'd find. "Ray, you're stepping into a dangerous mess," she said. "But that woman won't show her cracks unless someone corners her, and she's starting to crack." Don't back down. Her confidence steadied something in me. She always cut straight through the fog. "I'm not trying to burn everything I said. I just want Emily safe." "You can't keep her safe if you keep letting Linda play puppet master." She shot back. "That contract was step one. You need to dig." When she left, her words stayed. I returned to the kitchen table and opened the cafe's records, the ones Emily had shared months ago. My cursor hovered over the account logs before I finally clicked. The ledger loaded with missing entries and mangled data. Someone had deleted transactions. Someone had scrubbed the trail. One corrupted file still held a faint trace of a username, blurred but readable enough for the truth to start taking shape. My pulse kicked up. A name was tied to the edits. A person had logged in and altered the numbers. This wasn't a misunderstanding or sloppy bookkeeping. Someone had tried to bury something. Linda had gotten bold enough to believe no one would notice, and now I had a thread to pull. The man I used to be the one who traced fraud cases late into the night stirred again. Retirement had dulled the edge, but hadn't taken it completely. My hand tightened on the mouse as the implications settled in. She underestimated me. That was her first mistake. I stepped into Harbor Roast with my pulse climbing as I headed toward the back office. The place felt tense, the low hiss of the espresso machine the only sound carrying through. I needed to review the financials again this time, with enough proof that Linda had tampered with them. But the moment I crossed the threshold, it hit me that she already knew I was coming. Linda stood near the counter, arms folded posture sharpened by a smug tilt at the corner of her mouth. Well, Ray," she said, voice steady in that practiced way of hers. "I figured you'd show up." Looking for more trouble, I suppose I didn't react right away. My gaze drifted across the room, searching for anyone within earshot. "I need access to the financial records," I said, keeping my tone flat. "I know you erased them. This is your last chance to come clean." Emily appeared behind her, hovering in the doorway. She looked torn, hands fidgeting against her sleeves. Her eyes stayed locked on me, pleading for something she didn't know how to ask for. That look punched straight through me, but backing down would only hurt her more in the long run. Linda held her ground, the shift in her expression sharp enough to cut. "You don't get to walk in here and blame me, Ray. This business is mine. It's time you learned where you stand." My jaw tightened. "I'm not here to pick a fight. I'm here for the truth." Before another word left me, she grabbed her phone and dialed. "Yes, I have a man here causing a disturbance," she said. "I need officers sent over." My stomach dropped. I turned to Emily, hoping for even the smallest reaction, but she froze. She didn't move, didn't speak. Her breath hitched, and she stepped back as though the floor had shifted beneath her. 2 officers walked in moments later, their boots thudding across the wood. One looked at me, then at Linda, then back again. "Sir, you'll need to step outside," he said. On what grounds I tried to keep frustration from spilling over. "I haven't done anything." Linda didn't hesitate. "He's trespassing, threatening me and my staff. I don't want him here." The accusation hit harder than I expected. She'd planned this set, the board moved the pieces, and now she was closing the trap. "Please." Emily's voice cracked as she took a half step toward me. She didn't reach for me, though. She didn't do anything that could be interpreted as resistance. Her tears slipped down before she could hide them. "Let's go," the officer repeated, firmer this time. I forced a breath through my teeth and walked out with them, the heat of humiliation crawling up my spine. Linda stood at the doorway, watching, unreadable. I thought I heard her mumble something, but the officers kept me moving. When they finally released me near the curb, a familiar car pulled up. Rosa leaned over and popped the door open. "Get in," she said. "We talk." I slid into the seat. She didn't need to ask what happened. My face must have given it all away. "She's got paperwork ready," Rosa said as she pulled onto the road. "Means she's hiding something bigger." She was right. Every instinct I thought I'd retired was screaming the same warning. We drove for a while without talking. Then my phone buzzed. Greg's name filled the screen and I picked up. "Ray," he said, breath quick. "I just saw something. Linda Mercer. Her name's in another audit report. You need to see this. It's significant." My grip tightened around the phone. I stared out at the blur of buildings sliding past. Whatever this was, it went deeper than I thought. I stepped into Greg's office, carrying the stack of documents that had been sitting on my dining table for days. Greg had already pulled the audit report onto his monitor by the time I sat down across from him. His brows tightened the moment he spotted Linda's name tied to entries about irregular withdrawals from a medical assistance program. The pattern was unmistakable. Months of transfers, amounts that lined up almost perfectly with the period she pushed her way into Harbor Roast. "She's been pulling money from this fund for months," Greg said, tapping a line on the screen. "Matches the timing of her grabbing control of the cafe. You need to tread carefully." A dull ache settled in my gut. Exposing Linda meant dragging Emily through the fallout. The idea alone made my chest tighten. Emily would be the one forced to answer questions, face gossip, be tied to the scandal forever. That wasn't the future I wanted for her. But Linda had already pulled her into this mess. Turning away wouldn't save her anymore. My phone buzzed. Emily's name lit up the screen. I hesitated but answered. "Please don't do this, Dad," she said, voice trembling. "You don't understand. She's trying to hold the family together. You're tearing us apart." The desperation in her tone cut deeper than anything Linda had thrown at me. Beneath it was fear. Fear of Linda. Fear of losing stability. Fear of conflict. Emily had lived with that pressure for so long she didn't recognize it anymore. Another buzz shook the phone before I could speak. A message from Connor. If you keep this up, you'll never see Emily again. Back off. My jaw tightened. Connor wasn't thinking for himself, he was repeating whatever Linda fed him. Still, the threat hit hard. Losing Emily even temporarily was the one outcome I'd always feared. A third message arrived. This one from Linda. If you keep digging Ray, she won't set foot in that cafe again. Don't test me. That sealed her intentions. She wasn't defending a family. She was preserving her control. She wanted me cornered, wanted me doubting myself, wanted me to believe I was the source of the chaos. Rosa's voice from the night before resurfaced in my head. She wants you thinking you're the problem. That's how she keeps you away from Emily. Those words steadied me. I pulled up the cafe's digital records again this time, refusing to skim. Each withdrawal aligned with the dates on the contract she had pressured Emily into signing. The medical fund money Emily once thanked the community for had been siphoned out almost in tandem with Linda's takeover. My breath stalled. None of this was accidental. She hadn't just stumbled into a bad decision, she'd engineered the whole thing. The phone buzzed again. An email from Greg. Her name appeared in another audit. You need to see this now. Heat washed through my chest. That was the break I'd been waiting for. I grabbed my coat and walked out into the night. Streetlights blurred as I moved, thoughts spinning. Exposing Linda would blow everything open. But letting her continue meant leaving Emily trapped under a version of family built on threats and guilt. Another buzz hit my pocket while I crossed the sidewalk. I didn't check it. I already knew who it was. Linda had run out of subtle moves. Threats were all she had left. The weight on my shoulders shifted as I reached the car. Fear made room for something steadier. Determination. She had pushed too far, taken too much hurt Emily beyond what Emily even recognized. I opened the car door and sat down, gripping the steering wheel. Filing a surprise audit was a line I couldn't uncross, but the longer I waited, the worse the damage would get. It was time. I drove toward the district office without checking another notification. Whatever Linda sent, whatever she tried next, it no longer mattered. She'd underestimated how far I was willing to go to protect my daughter. My chest eased a little as I turned into the parking lot. The night wasn't any lighter, but the path through it finally was. The day of the surprise audit arrived with a heaviness that clung to everyone at Harbor Roast. Employees shuffled around, unsure why an auditor had shown up without warning. Linda stood at the counter pretending to sort receipts, though the slight tremble in her hands gave her away. She'd spent years perfecting that mask of confidence, but today it couldn't hold. I stayed near the back, far enough that no one could accuse me of interfering. This needed to unfold on its own. The auditor, a woman with steady movements and a sharp way of reading a screen, went through the files one tab at a time. Linda tried to hover casually beside her, but her shoulders kept tightening every time the cursor paused. She kept glancing at the monitor, as if she could will the woman to move faster. A sudden frown crossed the auditor's face. She clicked twice, leaned in, then opened a hidden folder I hadn't noticed before. My stomach tightened even before I saw what appeared. Transactions, dozens of them, routed straight to Linda's personal account. Funds meant for the community healthcare program. Money that had once been raised out of love for my daughter. Emily stepped forward before I could move. Her eyes locked on the numbers and her breath hitched. "That's my money," she whispered, voice breaking. "That was supposed to help me." She took it. Hearing it said aloud cut deeper than any shock I felt. I stayed still, letting her absorb it. I had dreaded this moment, but she needed the truth no matter how much it hurt. Linda snapped back into her old routine, trying to spin the story before it slipped out of her hands. "I was holding it for Emily," she said, reaching toward the screen. She didn't know how to manage the funds. "I stepped in for her sake." My jaw tightened. She was still reaching for control even while sinking. Mom Emily choked out, turning fully toward her. "Is this real? Did you actually take that money?" "It was for my health." Before Linda could respond, Connor pushed through the doorway. Anger twisted his face, but it wasn't aimed at his mother. It was aimed at Emily. "Stay out of this," he snapped. "You don't understand how things work around here. Mom's been helping and you're making a mess." Emily staggered back a step, the hurt open on her face. "You don't get it, Connor. She stole from me, from everyone." He ignored her and looked straight at me. "You've caused enough damage," he said. "If you keep pushing, you'll lose everything. Stay out of this." I didn't answer. Even a single word would feed the narrative Linda wanted, that I was meddling in their marriage. Emily needed to stand on her own feet, here, painful as it was. Linda saw her moment and lunged for it. "This is all fabricated," she told the auditor, pointing at me. "He's trying to destroy my family. He planted this. He's been obsessed with taking us down." A cold wave hit me. This was her final move, turning the entire room against me. The auditor looked at her, then at me, weighing both stories. "Is that true, Mr. Hale?" she asked. "I have documentation," I said, keeping my voice steady. "The ledger speaks for itself." Linda's gaze darted to the screen again. She folded her arms, raised her chin, and snapped, "I'm not opening anything else. I don't owe anyone an explanation." The auditor frowned. "I still need to review the remaining files." But Linda was already backing away. She didn't even pretend to cooperate anymore. She walked out of the cafe without looking at any of us. Connor stood frozen for a moment, torn between chasing after the truth and chasing after the woman who had shaped him for years. Then he ran after her. I watched Emily stare at the doorway long after they were gone. Her chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. Then her arms wrapped around herself as she broke down, the kind of sob that wrung everything out of her at once. I wanted to move to say something, to pull her into a hug, the way I did when she was a kid. But she needed space to feel the reality she had been avoiding for years. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, but the tears kept coming. Even then, she refused to fall apart completely. She stood there, shaking but standing, and I stood with her, knowing this was the point of no return. The moment the truth cracked open the world she had tried so hard to keep intact. I drove without speaking, and the air between us felt heavier than anything Linda had ever thrown my way. Emily kept her arms folded against her stomach, staring at the passing road as if it could explain what had happened back in the cafe. She finally broke. "Dad, I didn't want to sign it," she whispered. "She told me if I didn't, she'd tell everyone I kept the donation money. She said they'd call me a thief." The words hit hard. I didn't answer. Speaking too soon would have made it worse for her. My hand stayed locked on the wheel, and the road stretched ahead with no relief in sight. Linda had cornered her with shame, not logic. That was her talent, finding the softest spot and pressing until people bent. The drive toward Seattle felt longer than usual. Emily didn't look at me, and I didn't push. We were heading for the small cabin I used to rent near the outskirts, a place away from neighbors where she could breathe without someone watching her every move. We'd stay there until I figured out how far Linda's schemes reached. My phone buzzed when we reached the gravel road. Rosa's message lit the screen. "Check the warehouse near Tacoma." Someone saw her there. No explanations. No extra words. That alone told me enough. The moment we parked at the cabin, Emily sank onto the steps, as if her legs couldn't carry anything else. I checked the message again and studied the address. "We can look into this later," I said. "You should rest." She shook her head immediately. "No, I'm coming. I need to hear her say what she did." Her voice shook, but the resolve behind it didn't. I didn't argue. She deserved that truth. The drive to Tacoma carried a different weight anticipation, mixed with something that felt close to dread. Neither of us spoke, but this silence wasn't the suffocating kind. It was the kind that came before a storm broke open. When we reached the industrial strip near the docks, the air hummed with distant machinery. Trucks rumbled somewhere out of sight. I parked far enough that no one would notice the car. We walked toward the warehouse, keeping low, listening for movement. Emily stayed close but steady. She didn't cling. She didn't shrink. She followed because she chose to. A narrow window gave us the angle we needed. Through it, Linda sat hunched at a metal desk, typing fast. Her hands trembled as she clicked through files, movements jerky and frantic. Panic had taken over. "She's wiping the laptop," I murmured. "She knows the audit exposed her." A loud clang echoed from deeper in the building. Linda jumped, cursed, and slammed the laptop shut. Then Emily stepped forward, too fast for me to stop her. "Mom." Her voice cut through the space like a blade. "How much did you take?" "Tell me." Linda froze. Her shoulders sagged before she turned. Guilt flickered over her face, quickly replaced by something sharper. "You don't understand," she said, steadying herself. "I did it for you. Your father couldn't handle the paperwork. You owe this family more than you think. You stole from me." Emily said, the steadiness in her tone surprising even me. "That money was mine." Linda's expression twisted, and tears started falling, real or staged, I couldn't tell. "You have no idea what I sacrificed," she whispered. "Everything I did to protect this family." Emily shook her head. "No. You did it to control me. You did it to control all of us." Her voice didn't waver. I stepped back, letting them face each other. Emily had found a line she wouldn't let Linda cross again. Before Linda could reply, a man's voice echoed from the far end of the warehouse. "Linda, you here?" A worker approached, wiping his hands on a rag. When he spotted her, his eyes narrowed with recognition. "You're the woman who comes here for those boxes," he said. "You always take extra stuff. Cash, papers, didn't seem right to me." Linda's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. That was the moment she realized the room was turning against her. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed. "This is Ray Hale," I told the dispatcher. "I'm reporting evidence tampering and suspected theft. I'll give the address." Hanging up felt like releasing a weight I'd carried for months. Sirens grew louder during the next few minutes. Linda's breathing turned shallow, and she backed toward the wall as if she could disappear into it. The warehouse door rolled open and uniformed officers stepped in. One pointed toward Linda, the other toward us. Emily didn't step away. She didn't hide behind me. She watched her mother being approached, watched the panic swallow her composure, watched the consequences finally catch up. And I watched Emily, my daughter, stand through it without breaking. The sirens had already faded by the time I stepped into the station. Linda sat on a bench near the processing area, wrists cuffed, face washed out. Officers moved around her, calling out charges: embezzlement, theft, coercion. All the pieces she'd built her power on had collapsed in a single afternoon. Connor showed up minutes later. He stopped at the doorway like someone had kicked the breath out of him. His eyes were bloodshot, his shoulders sagging. When his gaze brushed past me, he flinched and looked away. He walked toward Emily as though his legs might give out. She didn't turn. "I don't want to talk to you," she said, arms folded tight. He opened his mouth, but nothing came. His head dropped, and he stepped back as if she'd struck him. Watching her choose distance from her own husband should have felt like vindication, but my chest tightened instead. A small part of me whispered a fear I'd never admit out loud. What if I lose her too? She kept her back, straight eyes fixed ahead. That was when it hit me. Love wasn't shielding her from pain. Love was this standing close enough for her to reach if she needed me far enough that she could stand on her own. She finally looked over, meeting my eyes. No words, just a quiet understanding that settled something in me. She wasn't breaking. She was choosing. Later, we stepped out into the parking lot. The cold bit through my jacket, but my body barely registered it. Emily stood a few steps away, studying the asphalt, like she needed the ground to answer for everything that had happened. "Do you want to do this?" I asked. She lifted her head, jaw set. "I'm fixing it. But it's going to be my way." "You should." She pulled a stack of documents from her pocket, contracts, agreements, all the paper Linda had used to hold her in place. They didn't look like traps anymore. They looked like leverage. "I'll handle it," she said. "I just need you there when I ask. Not to lead, just be there." A heaviness I'd carried for too long eased. I took the papers, held them a second, then gave them back. "You got this," I said. "I'm close when you need me." Rosa's car pulled up, her timing as sharp as ever. She stepped out with a slip of paper in her hand. "Customer list," she told Emily. "They've been asking when you'll open again. Thought you'd want it." Emily scanned the names and a small smile tugged at her mouth. "Thank you." Rosa nodded at me before heading back to her car. She didn't need to say anything else. My phone buzzed. A message from Connor asking to see Emily. I looked at her. "You want to meet him?" She studied the screen for a long moment. "I'll talk to him on my terms." I didn't follow her. She needed space and I gave it. The conversation didn't last long. When she returned, her steps were steady. "I'm okay," she said. "Tell him to deal with his part. I'm done with the rest." I let her words settle. She wasn't running from the wreckage anymore. She was stepping past it. The drive back to Harbor Roast was quiet, but not strained. More like we were each sorting through the pieces and deciding what mattered. When we reached the cafe, she unlocked the door and flipped the lights on. The place looked the same as always, but something in the air had shifted. She walked ahead, setting her notebook on the counter. "No rush," she murmured to herself, as she began jotting down repairs, ideas, plans. I clicked a few switches, letting the place brighten bit by bit. No grand declarations, no final speeches, just the two of us standing in the space she was reclaiming.